Now it's time for something a bit more unusual for most of my people, and also most likely for Gear Challenge, although we do want to push the envelope a bit and experiment with a few things. We've got two products from JetBeam, the TEA T20 and the TEA or T30. These are obviously flashlights, JetBeam being a flashlight manufacturer that's been around for a while. We'll start off with the TEA20. This is a AA battery powered flashlight. It comes in a nice cardboard box, basically relatively rudimentary and basic. It has a warranty card with what appears to be some specific information for the end user to fill out. Has an instruction booklet, a very small instruction booklet with specifications, etc. This flashlight is again powered by a AA battery. It will use, my understanding is that it will use alkaline batteries or rechargeable batteries. And what is somewhat unusual for us is that it is gold plated. This is a titanium body. It's a solid titanium body for the flashlight, but gold plated on the finish. And by gold we mean gold. I usually prefer something a little more subdued, but quite frankly, this will probably end up in the possession of a friend who would probably be matching it up with jewelry. The head of the flashlight, where the LED emitter is, and the tailpiece, where the button control is. This is not a subdued button or a flush button, so it will not, well, it might tail stand, but it's not typically how you would tail stand a light like this. It has an integral clip that is also gold plated, apparently not gold anodized, but gold plated, and it has the markings here. Now, it's relatively smooth, yet somewhat grippy. Fits in the palm of my hand. Of course, that will vary by individual. The clip will rotate because it's held captive by the tailpiece, by the tail cap. I'm going to go ahead and remove the head or end piece here, and you can see the inside of behind the emitter. And looking down into the body, you can see the spring down in the body at the tail cap piece. This light will disassemble into 3 parts, and the pocket clip will remove. You could take the pocket clip out, and the tail piece does screw down. There is a slight gap, but with the O-ring in place, it's still going to be watertight, because obviously the gap is supposed to be holding the ring of the pocket clip captive. And then here's a closer look at the inside of the tail cap. The spring is somewhat recessed, and I'm not going to pull this apart at this point. I'll go ahead and put the pocket clip back into place. Obviously it goes in a little skewed. The threads for the tailpiece have just a very slight hint of grittiness, but relatively smooth nonetheless. We'll be using a Duracell alkaline battery. Place that into place, and screwing the head or the bezel end of the light back into place. That's relatively smooth too, a little less gritty than the tailpiece felt. Now the UI on this is going to be very, very simple. Something that I'm just looking at now, the lens feels to be glass and appears to be somewhat thick. I don't see anything unusual about it at all. And the reflector is not very deep. The LED appears to be just about here, where my thumbnail is, maybe just a bit further back. So it's not a very deep reflector, so this will probably be more of an area light in the cast, or the cast of the light itself. It's probably not much of a throw light. And someone's commented throwing the light. I don't mean throwing the light, I mean how far or how strong the beam of light is thrown from the LED itself. So going through the user interface, you will tap the button one time. That looks like that's on a low setting. Tap it again. Looks like we are in the off position. Tapping it again. Okay, now completely depressing the button just activates on and off. And this is not a momentary on switch, so it is a reverse click button. The light does not come on even when you press the button very slightly, and even though it's completely depressed now, the light has not come on. Letting up on the light, and we've got power to the bulb. So this is referred to as a reverse click activator. Once the light is on, you can slightly press the on and off button and it will cycle through the different modes. Here we're at bright, and again, as you can see, this is something of an area light. We'll have a better look at that later when we can do some shots in darkness. So this appears to be the brightest setting. Cycle down to medium. Now we're at low, and then it goes to a strobe. And high, medium, low, strobe. And I actually completely depressed the button to get to that. Now once you're in the mode, if you power off the button and then power the button back on, it does have a memory. So whatever your last setting was, that will be the setting that the light will return to once you reactivate the button. So that's the AA sized light. The T30 is virtually identical. Again, we have warranty card, instruction manual, silica gel. Both lights do come with some extra O-rings, which is always nice to have in the event that you need them. But the difference on these two lights is that this is, the T30 is a AAA battery powered light. It's virtually identical in construction. It's just a smaller cousin, or maybe you might call it a nephew, to the T20. Size is a bit smaller, and the diameter is less as well. The lens on the T30 has an interesting, almost like a bubble underneath the lens where the LED is, and that appears to be because the LED appears to be mounted closer to the lens and not as deeply seated as the T20, which is the AA powered light. I'll go ahead and just do a quick measurement before I use the batteries on that. On the T20, we're at just a little over 9 centimeters, about almost 95 millimeters long. And on the T30, this is at about 83 millimeters. Again, the T30 at approximately 3 1/4 inches long, and the T20 at approximately a little over 3 1/2 inches long, almost 3 3/4 inches long. Now the T20, again, similar construction. Bezel side, the interior just behind the emitter. Looks very similar, but a downsized version of the T20. And in this case, there we go. The tail cap will remove. Very similar construction with the pocket clip, or the clip for the light, being captive by the tailpiece. The tailpiece construction is very similar to the T20, and I'm going to go ahead and leave this back on. The threads for the T30, interesting that 30 is for the smaller light and 20 is for the larger light. The threads are smooth, not much grittiness whatsoever. Place the battery into place. Make sure we've got the positive, the negative to the tail, and the positive to the bezel. Put the bezel into place, nice and tight, and the user interface is going to be very similar. Again, this one really goes into the hand nice and small. Power the light on, and then tap the button, the tail button. We go into strobe. It's probably high, medium, so there does appear to be 3, although between high mode and medium mode seem very close as far as the brightness level. So here we are at high, medium, low, and strobe. For the sake of comparison, bring them both down to low. Oddly enough, the AA powered light appears to be, its low seems to be less than the AAA powered light. So we'll get it up to bright. Here's the brightest setting. Very similar. Not a lot of difference there that's negligible, that's visible to the naked eye. Go to the medium setting, very similar. And again, the low setting on the AAA powered light seems to be considerably brighter than the AA powered light. And then we go to strobe, and again, very similar type of a pattern for strobe on these two lights. So again, not necessarily for everyone. With the gold plating, the finish is very, very nice, very well done, very consistent throughout the body of the light, at least from what I can tell. Both buttons extend beyond the body of the light, and the major difference that I notice is the difference between the emitter, the position of the LED itself, and the way the lens is configured. But otherwise, just AA sized, AAA sized, and to meet different size requirements. Otherwise, brightness levels are not much different than each other.